the Inner Game podcast. Brought to you by the Science of Excellence. Presented by Rob Hume, the leading elite athlete mental performance coach. Unleash your power.
Boom, let's go then. So welcome on to this next edition of the Inner Game podcast. Thank you for coming on the show. William Bjorfeld.
Thanks for having me.
Pardon?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Joining us, we have somebody with an incredible story, a Great Britain cyclist who's competed in many big major competitions over the years, somebody who has overcome real adversity in his life, and he is somebody who is living proof that the boundaries are not in the body, the boundaries are in our mind, and when we get our mind in tune, we can overcome amazing barriers. So I'm really excited about this, and I'm really excited about learning about how you have managed to deal with some of those setbacks that you've had, and how you flipped what can break some people and turned it into something powerful to turn things around in sport and in your life in general. So really excited and really great privilege to have you on. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's start at the beginning then. I'd like to rewind time. What was it that first got you into cycling? How did your journey into this sport begin for you?
Oh, it was quite a funny one, really. I was never massively into sport of any sort when I was in my early teens. In fact, I was fairly overweight, didn't have a lot of self-confidence, and I did pretty much everything that I could do to get out of doing PE at school. I really didn't enjoy it that much at all. But I kind of always messed about on my mountain bike over at local woods with mates and everything else after school. And one day, one of my friends, he said to me, you've got a cool bike. You might as well be racing, really. He happened to be going to a mountain bike race, and his parents very kindly offered to take me along with them. So, it was the first kind of like sporting event I'd ever done that I really enjoyed, and I just had this complete epiphany, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I finished this mountain bike cross country race, and I wasn't dead last, and I'd enjoyed it, and the bug literally just bit me straight away there and then.
That's fantastic. And with the other work that I do, being a PE teacher, one of the things that I've always stressed and believed is that there is a sporting physical activity for everyone. And unfortunately, in school, we can't offer all of the activities, but there is something out there for everybody, whether that is walking, getting out in the countryside, whether that is being out on a bike, or whether that's playing netball or hockey or badminton or whatever it is. There are enough choices out there of different sports for everybody, and it's about finding the one that kind of resonates with you. And that certainly seems like what happened with you there, Will.
Yeah, massively. And I enjoyed my first ever race, and so much I started training for the second race that I kind of planned a few weeks later and everything. And the second race that I rode, I was significantly better than I was in the first race I'd ever ridden, and it kind of just went from there, really. So a few months later, I was winning races. So as a mountain biker, and that was amazing for my self-confidence. It really helped build me up as a youngster. Gave me self-confidence that I'd never had before. I started to get fit, started to enjoy actually doing PE at school as well, even. So I went from the first year in comprehensive school, where I was given a detention in my lunch hour for what the PE teacher thought was having not put any effort into the cross-country year group run. And the last year in comprehensive school, I captained my tutor group, if you like, my class. in the year group, and then went through to a regional sort of finals for cross country running. So
Whoa.
It was just such a turnaround in fitness, you know.
That is amazing. That to go to go from one extreme to the other. It almost seems that by finding your passion in that cycling, it ignited, your what's the word I'm looking for? Your appetite for sport in general. Just by it flicked on that confidence in you. And that's certainly what happened with me and sport itself. I wasn't, when I was a younger boy, I wasn't very confident, and I'd be quite shy at times, if I'm honest. But then I realized that I first of all I could sprint, and then I realized I could play football, and that gave me confidence that I didn't have outside, at school, generally, in other areas of life. And again, I was able to take that into other sports that I played as well. Well, if I can do this, then perhaps I can also do that. Let's give this a go, and this a go, and this a go. And it went from, enjoying playing football, and it just spiraled into me playing lots of other sports as well. And that's why I'm so passionate about sport, because it has the potential to do so many different things for people. It can be a safety net, it can be a great lesson and metaphor for life as well, can't it?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it defined my life in so many different ways. There's a big part of me that feels like I owe something back to cycling, that I have to put back in myself one day for having taken so much, and yeah, don't get me wrong, I enjoy absolutely everything that I do in the cycling world, and it's the reason I'm still racing, now I'm 43 even. But I'll never be able to leave the sport alone. I love it.
Fantastic. So how can you walk me through kind of how you've transitioned from, like, obviously it sounds like you first started getting into the world of cycling in terms of mountain biking, but what you do now is road biking, isn't it, mainly? So how as you went through the years, how did it go from that into the different stages within cycling?
Okay, well, I mean, obviously I could spend hours talking about this, but we haven't got hours. But so I left school after my GCSEs, and I was very motivated to earn some money because I wanted to progress my cycling as well. So I came from a single parent family. My mum didn't have huge amounts of money to throw at me to help me race, and so I went and got an apprenticeship. So where I was living was 15 miles away from where my job was, effectively. So of course I didn't have a car when I left school because I was only 16, 17. So yeah, I was 16. So I ended up riding my bike to and from work every single day, and that helped build some really good fitness as well. So yeah, I carried on racing and everything, and at the same time doing part-time studies at college. And then I suppose 4 and a bit years through doing part-time college, I'd started to get quite good as a mountain biker, and I'd progressed from being an expert category senior rider into an elite category senior rider. I was given a sort of a good sponsorship deal by a big British mountain bike company at the time, and I started racing the Mountain Bike World Cup Series. So from there it went all into basically try and realize the dream of becoming a full-time mountain bike professional. A close friend of mine who was a couple of years above me in school, but good friend of mine, Ollie Beckinsale. So he went to a few Olympics, and he was a full-time pro mountain biker at the time. So I very much sort of had him as a role model, if you like, someone to kind of look up to and aspire to. And also, it never hurt on the few occasions where I did beat him in a mountain bike race as well.
So then, how did the transition go from mountain biking to road cycling? How did this come about?
Okay, well, I mean, I guess really with the mountain biking, it sort of in the mid 2000s, I was chucking a lot of money personally at racing a mountain bike internationally. So I was trying to ride as much of a World Cup series as I could, and do training camps and everything else that I could do to make myself as fit as I could be while still holding down a full-time job in engineering. So by this stage, I'd finished all my apprenticeships and I'd moved to a company in Bristol that was making aeroplanes called Airbus at Filton. So, and I was on the shop floor in manufacturing. So at this stage, my wife, well, I say my wife, obviously we're married now and stuff. We were first moving out together as girlfriend and boyfriend, and looking to get married and, you know, have a house and everything else. And me throwing sort of 10, 15K a year of my own personal money into bike racing became just a little bit unsustainable.
Yeah.
So at the same stage, I was doing some road races, Premier Calendar races, which were the top end of British National Series road races. I was doing those for training really, and I had some fairly good results. And at the end of the 2008 sort of mountain bike season, road season, I had offers on the table to ride on the road, that had, you know, a monetary sort of like cost to them. So, you know, not like a wage or anything, but there was all my expenses paid. Yeah. Plus I could keep a bike at the end of the year. So suddenly cycling could pay for itself. And that kind of made my decision really for me to switch from mountain bike racing, where I was blowing 10 or 15,000 pounds a year, into, you know, suddenly being, you know, cost neutral. So that kind of made my decision really for me. It was also at that stage where I thought, right, okay, well, if I'm going to start racing on the road, I want to ride the biggest races. So at the time, to me, the biggest race in Great Britain was the Tour of Britain. So that became my number one focus.
Fantastic. What if we can ask, look into both elements? What's your favourite memory from your mountain bike days, and what's been so far your favourite memory in the road cycling? If we could start with the mountain biking first, what's a memory that you have in mountain biking really stands out for you? Something, you know, maybe a proud moment or a defining moment. Do you have a memory like this?
Yeah, I've got quite a few really. I think one of the proudest moments I ever had was I was at a mountain bike World Cup in Italy, and I never had a massively high gridding, which is, you know, where you start on the start line, because I was, you know, a privateer and stuff, and I couldn't get to all the races that a lot of the other riders got to. So I'd often start in the 70s or 80s, so, you know, be 9th or 10th row back from the front. So this one mountain bike World Cup race in Italy, I think I started something like 75th on the grid, and at the end of the race I finished in the sort of top 25. And I remember the GB performance coach coming over to me at the finish line afterwards and just saying, well done, that was amazing, and you know, you just put a GB jersey on your back for world champs this year. And that was very emotional that day. That was an amazing moment.
Fantastic.
So that was that year, 2006, was the first time I rode for Great Britain effectively in a GB jersey as a mountain bike rider. So that was pretty cool, because it was something I'd been knocking on the door of trying to do for a good 4 years. So to try and to then get there and put a national squad jersey on was very special.
That's amazing. Yeah, I guess that was. And if you don't mind me asking, how old were you at that point? How long, you know, how many years had you been, you know, working away, plying your craft, you know, for that moment there?
Yeah, well, I must have been about 27-ish or 8-ish.
Yeah.
So I'd been plying my trade for a long time at that stage, definitely. So yeah, my wife was probably getting frustrated with me again for, you know, throwing so much money into my sort of racing and everything else. But yeah, it was very much about it's what I am. You know, I can't change what I am in that sense. And yeah, it was just a case of cracking on with it and getting some of those rewards. You know, like racing some of the big races in a Great Britain jersey was pretty amazing.
And I'd imagine that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that when you've been going for so long, not quite getting those results that, you got your wife kind of questioning, questioning what you're doing. And I'm sure that there could have even been a part of you questioning yourself, at times. And was that, going on at all around that period of time?
Yeah, I think you probably always question yourself to a degree when you're an athlete. You question the training you're doing, and is it going to be effective? And I think the only way really that you can measure yourself is against yourself. If you come out of a race with a new personal best performance and it's a race you've been targeting, then that kind of helps encourage you then basically to crack on and keep going. So I think every single year I got slightly better and had bigger results in one way, shape or form, and that's always encouraged me a lot, to keep going.
I'm curious as to what was different on that day. If you can remember back to when you went and performed so well, making in that competition in Italy, how did you do it? How did you race that day differently than perhaps other days? How did you do it? What was different?
I don't know. Honestly, I had a very good coach at the time who'd, we had targeted that one race as a specific event that I'd, be in good form for. I'd taken a very good friend of mine who I was friends with in school out to that race with me as my helper effectively. And everything just went really smoothly. I was super relaxed. We stayed in a hotel that was close to where the race was, a few hundred meters away from where the start line was. So I think there was a lot of planning that went into making that race very easy for myself as an athlete. And my friend Simon, who came with me, he knew exactly what I needed to be looked after and everything else. So he was spannering for me, doing bid-ons for me and everything else. So he was brilliant as well. And at the same time, because we've been friends, since we were 9 years old, we were always having a good laugh together at the same time. So no, it was just an amazing week away, really, I suppose. Yeah, it was good.
It certainly seems that that as you touched on it there, that a big part of that success for that was the planning, the preparation, creating the environment which allowed you to just step out there and go and do your thing. You managed to take care of a lot of these other things that I don't know, maybe in other races you weren't quite able to create that same environment, that maybe you weren't quite able to have that same detailed level of preparation. And maybe by having all those boxes ticked, or so many of them, it could just leave your mind and your body to just go and do your thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of the World Cups that I went to, I certainly couldn't afford to take a friend to all the World Cups that I went to, so a lot of them I went to them as a privateer, and I was very much kind of just winging it, and trying to bounce off people that I met friends at races and everything else, and I'd say to such and such a person, if I bottle for your girlfriend in this race, can you do bottles for me, or can she do bottles for me in my race, sort of thing and stuff. So there's a stress involved with going out there and finding someone to help you in a race and everything else. So sorting stuff out for yourself. So I guess in that one race there was a lot of stuff that I didn't have to do that if I'd gone to a World Cup normally I would have had to have done. Certainly, we flew into Venice and then we drove into the Dolomites for this race, and my friend drove the hire car, whereas normally, I'd be getting the hire car out of the airport and everything and then driving it however many hours it was from the airport to the race and everything else, sort of thing. So there was quite a lot of fatigue mentally and physically that didn't happen to me, that then I was able to put into my performance as a rider.
That makes complete sense to me. That will. What about the cycling then, the road cycling? And I'm sure you got a few memories here. Is there a couple of events, moments, things which have happened which stand out for you as really proud moments or defining moments in this respect, in this particular sport?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's my road career almost seems like a career of, I, I dare say, sort of almost two halves, if you like. So the run from sort of 2008, where I dabbled in road racing, into, I suppose, 2015, up to the point where I had my accident and everything. There were years there where I progressed basically from being an amateur to the point where I almost went professional and had a year riding at continental level for Motorpoint Pro Cycling. That was an incredible season, because there were lots of friends of mine personally that were on that team as well, and we had some amazing races abroad together and everything. And helping my teammates win bike races was a massive part of what I'm about. So I'm not necessarily an out and out sprinter, but I'm someone who's a massive team player. So there were races I was on the podium myself that year, but helping some of my teammates win big races meant a lot to me. So that was a really good year. And then stepping down to have more of a family a little bit, and back to a kind of elite level team in 2012 through to 2015, the fire never really went from my belly. So 2015, I had an incredibly good year, and one of the standout performances really of my road career was in a tour series that year in Barrow in Finesse. So the night before, I'd had a really bad race where I sort of had a bit of a crash almost, if you like, and I'd had to come back from that. Finished in the top 16, so knew that I was strong, but at the same time I was frustrated, so that the race had not gone as well as I wanted it to go. The next night in Barrow and Finesse, our DS Cole Sturgis, he'd said to me, look, just take it steady tonight, wait until the last 15 minutes and then just roll the dice and see if you can have a result out of it for yourself. So I did, and got away with a guy called Chris Lawless, who's a professional rider, went professional the year after, in 16, and we rolled away from the bunch and ended up finishing first and second. But awesome. I think my celebrations for second got noticed more than Chris's win that night, so that was a good night.
Fantastic. Seems I was going to leave it until a little bit later on, but I think it seems right to talk about the big kind of change in your life when you had your accident. Can you expand on kind of what happened? Where you were at with things in sport. In terms of the level that you're performing at, and then what happened with the accident. And then dealing with all of that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, 2015, I had such a great year. National series, I'd had a handful of top tens and podiums. Tour series, I'd been up there as well. So I had interest from a UCI Continental team for 2016, and I'd not signed a contract, but I did have kind of like a word of someone who was in charge that I'd have a spot on their squad for the next year. So that was someone who I'd known for a long time, and I trusted in them. So I was happy that 2016 I ride again at continental level, and that brought back my dream of racing Tour of Britain, which had eluded me for one reason or another up till then. So that was September. So it was end of the season in 2015 in September, and I was out training for the Track National Championships, and coming in down a fast descent off the top of the men dips, which I know really well like the back of my hand. I was following behind a van with a car behind me, and I was riding on the dashed white line, if you like, in the middle of the road. I can only imagine to see where the cattle grid was at the bottom of the descent, and as the van that was in front of me went round a left-hand corner at the bottom of the descent, the car that was coming up the other way, who was also kind of on the white line, so the front corner of his car collected the front corner of my leg just below the knee on my right leg. I was probably doing 40 or 45 miles an hour. He was probably doing 35 to 40 miles an hour as well. Yeah. So it was, an 80 mile per hour plus combined impact on my lower right leg just below the knee. So I'm not aware of the accident. I've got no memory of that whole week. It's amazing how much your brain can wipe from what's happened. Yeah. But yeah, I was flipped up onto the windscreen of the car, over the roof and then down the road. My bike was just completely obliterated on the impact. But yeah, I mean, I had a brain bleed. I broke my pelvis at both sides. So your pelvis is joined together in 3 places. I broke it in 2 of them. Broke my left femur, which is the larger bone in the upper part of my left leg. And my lower right leg, sorry, I nearly took it off completely. So yeah, it was a fairly horrific accident. I'm very glad that I can't actually remember any of it, or the other side of it. So, but I was airlifted out to Southmead Hospital. So yeah, it was a fairly serious one.
Yeah. Was that while she was competing, or was that while she was training?
I was just out training. Yeah. So I'd come home from work that day, and it was a nice sunny afternoon. So I think I probably had like a 2 or 3 hour ride to do. So I'd taken a route over the Mendips and everything to do some efforts, I expect. And I expect by the time I was coming down Burrington Combe, I was probably, chilling out a little bit, because the hard work had been done by then. So I was ready to kind of like just chill and ride home, the 45 minutes to ride home sort of thing.
Yeah. Gosh. So walk me through kind of how you, I don't know, in those weeks, after that, obviously you've had your various, you would have had numerous operations, won't you?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the operations that happened in the first few days, my wife was prepped for me to come out of surgery without my lower right leg. So they were potentially going to cut it off just above the knee, because they didn't think there wasn't anything that they could do to save what was left of my lower right leg. And from what I can understand, during surgery, the surgeon changed his mind and thought, well, maybe if I piece all these fragments together and put enough strips of titanium and screws in place to hold them all together, maybe it would heal. So literally that's what he did. I have 3 titanium plates that run about 12 inches down my tib, which is the larger bone in the lower part of your leg. And I have about 30 screws that hold together all the fragments of bone. And luckily all of that somehow knitted together. But it was quite amusing, because while I was in hospital, I was told, I wouldn't probably walk properly again. I wouldn't ride a bike again. The surgeons, because I had such a large hole in my lower right leg, they had to harvest calf muscle from the back of my leg. So they took a calf muscle from the back of my leg and put it on the front of my leg, and then put a skin graft over the top to patch up the hole. So, that straight away took away part of my right, my lower right leg. So yeah, it was interesting again.
So, you've had the operations. What's your world has, you and your world literally has been flipped upside down. And what's your mentality at that stage? How are you thinking about just life in general? Kind of, I don't know, a month after it all, how are you looking at, doctors have said to you, you're not going to walk again, you ain't going to be riding a bike again. That's what they said, but how are you? What are you thinking in those moments?
I must have been just drinking too much coffee or something, because yeah, I mean, like I was always very adamant that I would race a bike again. I wouldn't just walk again and ride again. I would race again. So I was in hospital, and I was ordering a new bike with the insurance money and everything, and ordering a turbo trainer so that I could set my bike up in the living room on a stationary trainer as soon as I got out of hospital. My daughter's birthday, that was 4 weeks almost from the date where I had the accident, that was a point where I was like, I have to be home for my daughter's birthday. So that was kind of my first goal, if you like, was to be well enough that they would discharge me, or allow me to discharge myself at least, and to get home for my daughter's birthday. So that was like the first primary goal, if you like, which I succeeded in. So, but I think it was very much down to having a poker face, because they put a pin basically in my left femur, and they put two screws top and 2 screws bottom. So 2 by the knee and 2 by the hip, to hold my femur together with this rod that was up the center of it. And so the fracture that was in my left femur then was completely stable. but it hurt like hell. It hurt so much to put any weight on it. But yeah, it was a case of, they said, well, okay, if you can go up and down steps, and if you can use crutches and go all up and down the ward and everything else on your left leg and everything, that will allow you to discharge yourself. So it became very much a right, nothing hurts, and yeah, I'll discharge myself out of hospital and I'll just do this. So yeah, there was a proper athlete's game face on when I was doing it.
Crikey. So then, in terms of, obviously, it seems like, not it seems like, very early on you decided that you just were not going to accept what the medical opinion was. How did you go about, getting yourself back in any kind of condition? Obviously, before you can think about actually properly cycling again, you have to rehab the body.
Yeah.
How, what was this process like, from building back up, strengthening the bone, the ligaments, the tendons, the muscles, and then getting even just to get to that point? That was probably, I'm sure that was the most difficult part of it all. And then obviously after that, you've got to get fit again to ride.
That's it. Well, I mean, I didn't actually know that I was going to be allowed to keep my lower right leg until nearly Christmas of 2015. So I think it was the 22nd or 23rd of December. I had an appointment with some x-rays and everything else with some doctors. And it was at that stage where they said, your lower right leg has healed enough that we're not going to operate to take it off, so you can keep it. So that was like a mega early Christmas present for me.
Yeah.
And at that stage, it was very much a case of, right, okay, I wasn't allowed to put any weight on it up until then. But I'd been pedaling a stationary trainer. So I'd been, getting the body used to flowing again and pedaling again, just, circling around, just, although not putting any pressure on my right foot at all. I'd got the blood flow going back into it. I was trying to remind my body that it needed this part of itself basically to function normally again. So that I've been trying to do things like that. And then once I got the green light, I was able to put weight on it. Again, my old mountain bike coach, who looked after me for the best part of 13, 14 years, I went to him. He ran a company in Bristol, runs a company in Bristol called My Life Personal Training. And basically Andy Wadsworth. And he basically helped me with all the kind of rehab stuff, if you like, to get my body functioning again in the right way, start strengthening all the tendons again so that I could start pedaling again without too much of an imbalance. And also, not injuring myself as I go out to ride a bike again. So I seem to remember the first bike ride I did outside, everyone said to me, oh, don't do more than, an hour to an hour and a half and just go really easy. And I went out and did 3 hours on the first ride that I did outside and blew up so badly. It was just massive sugar depletion. It was unreal. But yeah, it was so good to be back outside again on a bike. That was, I'm trying to think when that was now. That would have been probably about the third week of January in 2016. So yeah, I booked myself some flights to Mallorca in February, and went and did a 10-day training camp out there, because obviously the weather's so much nicer in Mallorca in the winter. So that really helped to kickstart off my fitness again then for the 2016 season. So
you're out in Mallorca kind of February time of 2016, yeah? When was the accident again?
September 2015.
September 2015. So less than 18. Oh, September 15. Gosh.
Yeah.
September 15, and then February 2016.
Yep.
Flipping heck. So that is that is very quick. What's that? October, November, December, January, February. 5 months. Crikey.
Yeah, and then I raced my first national series race in April 2016, and finished it in a fairly respectable position, sort of thing, a few minutes off the win, in about 30th place. So
nice. That is very inspiring, Will. There's no doubt about that. I love hearing stories like this. I really do. Obviously, with all the work and research that I've done over the years about the mind and the power of belief, and I've read a lot about spontaneous remissions. How people recover from cancers, illnesses that they're diagnosed by doctors. You're incurable. You've only got this long to live, and there are people that don't die, that stay alive, that are still living. Now when they're told they're supposed to be dead 15, 20 years ago, and there's absolutely no doubt about it that happens because of the way internally these people are processing that event. And I spent a lot of time looking at the placebo effect, which ultimately is all about belief. Hence why you can give somebody a sugar pill which does absolutely nothing, but if you tell somebody and you dress it up and you make it convincing that this pill is going to do X, they take the pill. And because they believe that pill is going to make them do whatever it is you tell them, but if they believe it, and when they believe enough, their body responds. And many people would never got close to doing what you have come. And I hope you agree with me, but correct me if not, that the fundamental reason which took you, from both legs smashed to pieces, being told that you're not going to walk again, being told that you're not going to, cycle again, not being able to walk again, what about all these other implications in your life, your work, all the, things with your family. Was it, in your opinion, was it down to belief, sheer willpower of not accepting the circumstances which got you back to where you are?
Oh, definitely. And there was added motivation as well, because whilst I was in hospital, one of my friends was riding for Steve Bates as a tandem pilot, basically. So he was in British Cycling's para squad, if you like, Paralympic cycling team. He'd had a chat with his coach at British Cycling, a guy called Dan Henchy at the time, and so I got contacted whilst I was in hospital by British Cycling, and they'd said to me as well whilst I was in hospital that if you decide you want to come back to cycling, if you got back to anywhere near the level you were before, we'd be looking at you for our Paralympic cycling team. So I guess that became an added incentive, if you like, to crack on and try and get back to being the best that I could be. So that definitely helped.
I can imagine. And just something that you've said there, I feel that just generally in life and in sport, people spend too much time comparing themselves to somebody else, looking at somebody else and not being as good as that, or looking at somebody else and wanting to be as good as them or better than them. When really, the only thing that any of us in sport or outside of sport needs to focus on is becoming the greatest version of themselves possible. And when you can tune your mind into that process, the amount of growth, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically that you can experience that's where the real power is. Because if you're focusing on yourself, that's where your energy is going. You're not wasting your energy thinking about somebody else being not as good as somebody else. You can focus it on you making these marginal gains and then looking back at yourself. Well, a month ago I was there. 3 months I was there. 6 months I was there. And walking through that process is, I'm sure, one of the great tools that you was able to use and utilize to kind of keep you focused, on getting back to be the person that you wanted to be.
Yeah.
So you mentioned it there about the Paralympics. So when did you start representing GB in the Paralympic vest then?
Okay, well, they British Cycling basically took me to a paracycling World Cup in Belgium in 2016. So they got the UCI, the World Cycling Federation's doctors, to basically ratify that I would qualify as a paracyclist. They believed I'd be C5, which the UCI agreed with. They basically passed that off and classified me. And then they had Rio Paralympics at the time that they were working towards. So all of their resources were being pooled into making sure that their athletes came out with as many medals as they could. So I was taken onto the squad in March 2017 with a view towards working towards Tokyo and possibly Paris. So yeah, I suppose it all started to get really serious from there, really. Yeah. The additional UK sport lottery funding helped me really to progress myself as an athlete as well, because for the first time in my career, I was able to take time off work whilst work were permitting it and everything, and take extra unpaid leave to go to training camps, more training camps than I would have done before, and yeah, just able to really help myself then as an athlete. So in a weird way now, my ultimate sprint power is definitely down on where it was before the accident, but my functional threshold power, if you like, my threshold is probably better than it was before the accident, because I've been able to train so much better and rest a little bit better than I was able to before, by just taking a bit more time off work to actually focus on my sporting career. So that's really helped.
And so what was it like for you when you did go and represent the country at such a major competition? Then how was that for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been fantastic. I've almost lost count now how many World Cup races I've ridden. I think I must have ridden 2 or 3 every year since 2017, and then 2 or 3 World Championships as well, whether that's been on the track or the road. And I've won World Cup events in a Great Britain jersey, which is amazing, because obviously when you're on the top step of the podium and the national anthem's playing, it doesn't really get a lot better than that, and you're being presented with gold medals. That's very, very cool. And then also a World Championship event. So I mean, I had a silver medal in the track race at the World Champs, which was really good, back in 2018. But I think the most frustrating thing at the same time has been I've had more fourth places, I'm told, than anyone else on the Paralympic squad. So it's frustrating to get so close sometimes to a medal, and just miss out by millimeters of a tire's width, or fractions of a second at times. So it's been frustrating, but a good journey at the same time.
Yeah, most definitely. So did you go to the Tokyo Paralympics then?
I didn't know, so this will make you laugh actually. So back in April it was middle of April last year, I went out mountain biking with my son, and I basically got to the top of a little hill around the back of some local woods near to where we live, stopped, put my foot down, turned around to see where my lad was, and I didn't really look at where I was putting my foot down, and I kind of put my foot onto a tree root, and my foot slipped as I was turning around to see where my lad was, and I fell over sideways. So I wasn't sending it down a massive descent or doing anything crazy, but as I fell sideways, there was a rock the other side of the tree root, and the rock went into my leg just above my ankle joint, and it broke my tibia.
Gosh.
So
is that
I put
the right tibia?
Left tibia.
So it was the other one, right?
Yeah, that's it. So it displaced it and broke it. And yeah, I put a brave face on, rode my bike home, and said, "Yeah, no, I'm fine. Because 7 days later, I was supposed to be racing in Belgium for the first World Cup of last year. And I wanted to put down a decent marker there so that I knew where I would be 7 weeks from there. From that World Cup, basically, was the date of the World Championships in Portugal in Cascais, and I knew that I needed to medal in Cascais, or at least be very close to a medal, to guarantee my selection for Tokyo. because there were so many athletes on the squad. There were 8 places and 13 athletes that could have filled those 8 places. So I knew that I needed at least 1 medal out of Road Worlds. But yeah, when I broke my leg 7 weeks out from Road Worlds, I kind of knew there and then that I was going to be on a hiding to nothing to get selected for Tokyo.
An unfortunate event, hey?
That's it. It's one of those ones where you have to try and turn a negative into a positive.
Yeah.
So, British Cycling, fair play to them. I got really well looked after as an athlete. So we got my brake pinned and plated within 3 days of having broken it, which in COVID times was, fairly tricky. But we pulled that off, and I had to have 3 weeks off the bike completely to allow it to knit together enough to a stage where I could start riding again. So in the 4th week back, which was then 2.5 weeks out from Road Worlds, I started to train a little bit again. So I had basically 10 days of doing some fairly solid training before I went to Road Worlds. But I turned up to Road Worlds knowing that I wouldn't have the kind of fitness that I needed. But yeah, it was, a lot of the coaches were stunned even that I was there, 6.5, 7 weeks after breaking my leg. I still couldn't walk properly. I was still walking with a limp because it was still painful to put weight on a little bit. But yeah, I went to Road Worlds. I finished 9th in the time trial and 14th in the road race in the main bunch. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, will by name, willpower by nature, hey, mate.
That's it. I mean, the positive was it was a good way for me to be able to get some training in as well. So before and after the event, I did use some of the days for harder training rides. And in the back of my mind, I thought, right, okay, well, Tokyo is not going to happen. But I was racing for a continental road team in the UK, Swift Carbon Pro Cycling. And I knew that we'd be racing, or the team would be racing Tour of Britain that year. So with that having been a goal of mine for so long, I'd looked at Tour of Britain when I was a kid, when I was, 10 or 11 years old, and seen it finish in Bristol on College Green. So it was a race that I'd wanted to do for an incredibly long time. So that became my main focus. I could have ridden it in 2019 potentially. But my team manager had asked my coach, could we have Will for Tour of Britain? And my coach had turned around and said, no, we need him to come to the Paracycling World Champs, which clashed. His job effectively is a paracyclist, so you can't have him for Tour of Britain. So that was, another frustrating reason that I'd missed the Tour of Britain effectively. So, but yeah, to then be able to fully focus on racing Tour of Britain last year, it was a big thing for me. Yeah.
Was that the first time you raced it, or did you say you had done it before?
No, that was it. That was the first time I'd raced it last year.
Okay.
So I'd come very close to riding it in 2011.
Yeah.
Only to basically sort of get flicked for a teammate 2 days before it started, after I'd been announced in all the press and everything else that I was riding and been told I was riding. And basically the team's owner had a sudden change of mind and heart as to who he was going to put in. So, it was, again, riding for Motorpoint, we had 8-9 guys that could have easily raced the Tour of Britain. Tour of Britain's only 6 riders, so it's always a little bit sad when a rider doesn't get a spot. But at the same time, there's everyone who's on a team is there to try and ride the best races, and everyone wants the Tour of Britain. It's the race. It's like if you ask a Frenchman which race he wants to do more than anything, a Frenchman will say, I don't care about the Olympics, I don't care about the World Champs, I want to ride Tour de France.
Yeah.
So, and it's for a lot of British cyclists, British riders, Tour of Britain is, that ultimate hiatus of a race that everyone wants to get to.
And it took you all those years, all those moments, all those freak accidents, all those things that went wrong. And that dream of achieving that goal could have ended a long time ago, really, couldn't it?
It could have done, yeah. I mean, to race it at the age of 42, I've become the second oldest rider ever in the history of the race to ride it. There's only Malcolm Elliott, who I'm good friends with, who's ridden it, who was older than me. And I've become the first male paracyclist ever to race Tour of Britain as well. So that was, it's very, very cool.
So you became the first Paralympic cyclist to race it in not, amongst all the professional, fully able cyclists.
Yeah,
that's
that's it. I'm sort of bumping elbows with Mark Cavendish, Tony Greipel, Tony Martin, Andrew Greipel, all these other big named hitters riders, that you see in the Tour de France. They're riders that have been winning races at Tour de France, 3 months earlier, and then I'm bumping shoulders with them. So no, it was very special.
You've gone through so much, as an athlete. It's obviously challenged you massively, just in life in general. Is that moment there, riding that Tour of Britain? Is that your defining moment, the one that meant or means the most to you so far?
Yeah, I think so far, definitely. I mean, there's obviously there's goals now going forward from where we are today, but up to now, that is, nothing else at the moment in cycling that I've done tops racing Tour of Britain. Really, it was an incredible event to be a part of, and it was a massive lifelong dream, really. So I was getting emotional about it 3 days after it finished. So I couldn't believe I'd just raced something I'd been wanting to ride for so many years, and it was amazing.
Yeah, so powerful, Will. Your story, just your sheer determination, one, to never give in, and two, to do something that you just love to do. That is just coming across so strongly. That, as you said at the start, it's who I am. Cycling has helped shape you, obviously as an athlete, but it shaped you as a person, hasn't it? It's given you so much, and without it, I'd imagine you'd feel like a very different person who definitely had a very different life.
Definitely. I mean, when I was younger, before I really got into sport, I had no idea about nutrition. I was overweight. So had I not found cycling as a sport that I enjoyed doing, I'd be one of those statistics now, with obesity and all the rest of it, because I liked eating all the worst stuff in the world. I'd go into McDonald's and I wouldn't have one, I'd have 2 Happy Meals or whatever. And, I'd eat all the chocolate in the world, all the sweets, all the crisps. And I had no idea of what that was doing to me. And it was only really as I started to realize that, your power to weight ratio makes a big difference when you're on a bike, that I started then to think about what I was actually putting into my body. And, not just about what I was putting into my body, but when I was putting it into my body as well. So, I naturally, I'm quite a big sort of person and everything else. I'm not a tiny guy that weighs 60 kilos. I weigh 73 kilos when I'm on song. So I'm quite a big guy anyway in the cycling world. But I have to work really, really hard to get down to that ultimate race weight. My body will happily sit at 80 kilos. If I let myself. So I have to work hard day in, day out to try and keep on top of my nutrition. And there's so many different things that's taught me. And then at the same time, of course, my family, they can see how hard I work with my nutrition, and that's had an effect on them. So, my son, he's only 10 years old, but he thinks nothing of going and into the fridge and then grabbing a handful of spinach and just eating it raw out of the bag. And that's because he's seen me doing it. It's mega. There's little things that, just roll off onto my kids as well. So, yeah, it's been really cool.
In order to perform in your sport, as a percentage, what percent do you believe is mental, and what percent is the physical? What do you think are the percentages of the drivers as to which of those two facets has on performance?
I think the mental aspect of it is a huge one. I mean, I always believed that because I'd raced when I was a mountain biker, certainly World Cup level, when I came back to the British National Series, the races would be so much easier, and they were. And maybe that was my perception of, because I was always gridded on the front row, and because I always knew that I could perform at a certain level internationally, I expected a much greater performance of myself nationally when I was racing nationally. When I swapped into road racing, I always thought, okay, well, I'm used to being in the top 5 or top 10 of a national series mountain bike race, so that's where I should be placing as a road rider. And I was straight away. It wasn't like swapping to road racing was hard. It was easy in that sense. The hard part was learning all the tactics, really, and then sort of gaining that knowledge of how to ride the road sensibly and cleverly. Yeah. That was what I didn't have, because I was an out and out, a mountain bike's almost like a time trial. You go out from the gun flat out, and it's a case of, first person across the line wins. Whereas road racing, the road races are so much longer. You have to use other people basically to get yourself across the line first. So there's so many different things that I've had to learn, and everything else that, it's been interesting.
So if I could push you on a percentage, what would you say? What percent, in order for you to perform at the highest level that you have done and are doing?
That's really tricky. I'd say
those percentage. What percent is mental and what's physical, in your opinion?
I'd say probably about 65% is physical and about 35% is mental.
Yeah.
And this will make you smile. I mean, last night I did a Zwift race. I don't know if you know what Zwift is. So basically, I have an avatar basically on my iPad effectively it's like a computer game that you ride your bike, and the power meter in your turbo trainer reads up to your iPad. So it replicates the power that you're putting out through your pedals to your avatar. At the same time, the terrain that you're riding up and down on Zwift, on this computer game, is fed back through your pedals. So if you're going up a hill, it's much harder. If you're going down a hill, it's much easier. And Zwift basically is an online game, so you can race people at almost any time of the day across the globe, and you can do events. So last night, one of my training sessions was to do a Zwift race, and there were 60 people in the Zwift race. I'd already been out training yesterday anyway, so I'd done a steady ride sort of early on in the afternoon, and then basically later on in the evening, I had to do this Zwift race. It was part of the training that was set by my coach, and I didn't feel massively up for it, if I'm honest. So before I went into the garage, I literally went into the kids' sweets cupboard, grabbed a handful of Skittles, chucked them into my mouth, and thought, right, that'll be a nice sugar rush. I'll be up for this now. So I went into the garage. And mentally, I suppose I'd just given myself a placebo. It probably hadn't changed anything, but I felt a little bit more up for it. The fact that I'd given myself a treat. And I went into the race of, right, okay, don't want to embarrass myself here, because I have on Zwift, I've got a big pro tag thing because they sponsor me. So, I'd gone into this race. Everyone else is there, could well just be a normal Joe. Yeah. And so I'm the only rider on the start line with a pro tag by his name. So of course I'm thinking, okay, well, I kind of don't want to make a fool of myself. I kind of really want to win this. Yeah. So I basically tactically rode it quite well. Kept myself well hidden, so I hadn't had to use too much energy until I got to the last half of the race, and then I launched a very big attack and rode away from the rest of the guys in the race. So ended up, winning by a very clear margin at the end of sort of 31 seconds over the chasing group. So it is. There is so much mental, isn't there, into anything you do in sport. Just that little placebo, that handful of Skittles, just gave me that placebo of that little sugar rush. Yeah,
definitely. Do you, especially as you've at any point, when it was with your, when you was on the pro cycling teams before the accident, and then obviously since you've been part of the GB squad, is there much sports psychology or mental performance coaching? Do you have access to these types of programs or these types of avenues to help you with performance? Is that there for you if you need it?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, for me, it's a bit trickier because I'm based in Bristol and British Cycling are based in Manchester. So it's a little bit trickier in that sense. But yeah, there is a sports psychologist that works with the paracycling squad who's based in Manchester, who I know that I can contact any time of the day if I need to.
Yeah.
And certainly who comes with us to all the World Championship events that we do, and make sure that we're in a fit, healthy state of mind to do what we're about to undertake. So it's something that is thought about.
Good. And have you, obviously you've had so many different, challenges, and obviously the big one being the accident. Was there ever a time where you were struggling mentally with that, or were you able to just did your mental health ever, was that ever affected at that, during some of that, or were you able to just very quickly just attune your mind into, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm aiming for, and this is what I'm going to do? Or did you have some, I don't know, stumbling blocks, mentally, emotionally with that at any time?
I don't think I had any stumbling blocks with doing what I wanted to do. I think the only thing that I struggled with initially was the appearance of my lower right leg. That was the only thing that I really struggled with a little bit. Having calf muscle on the front of my leg, that looked fairly strange. Always does, but I was almost at the stage at one point where I was talking about plastic surgery, maybe to have a synthetic calf muscle put into the back of my leg to make it look normal again. Right. But my wife was so supportive. She just said, this is a part of who you are now. This is a part of what you are, and you need to go out there and just be proud of it and own it. So that thing where chicks dig scars, it was almost a bit like that. But my wife was so supportive to me through the accident and the aftermath of the accident. That made a huge difference.
Yeah, just having that network of some kind, someone that who can be positive, somebody who can listen to you, somebody who can just say that right thing in that right moment, that sometimes you can't get there yourself, that someone else can say that thing that help, that you just needed to hear. You can have all of these psychologists, therapists, mental performance coach, but all of us as people have the power to help change somebody's mentality, change somebody's day just by being positive, being kind, being polite, being positive, and by the sounds of it, your wife was really important in that process, and just maybe just getting you to remember who you are and to trust who you are and what you did and what you've done in the past, and using your your drive and motivation and belief in yourself. Sometimes just having someone else who believes in you as well, just in those darker moments, is really special.
It really is. Yeah, it really is.
Where are we now? I ask everybody this question. I believe that we all have many talents and abilities. What do you think, Willie, is your superpower? Maybe just, I'm sure you'll have many things, but one thing which really has helped get you to where you've got to, one thing which has helped you achieve the things that you've achieved. And this could be like, a physical thing, a particular type of fitness. It could be a tactical thing, a way that you ride or the way that you approach it. Or it could also be a mental thing, a habit, a skill, a trait, something like that. What would be your one superpower that kind of sets you apart from other people, and that's helped you get to where you've got to?
I guess it's just having the belief in myself and just never giving up. Whenever I can see that I've improved just a little bit, that gives me that little bit more self-belief again, to keep going. And that I'm always chasing, new targets that have been set for me either by my coach or myself. And it's just that ability to never give up on myself. That's that's definitely got to be the biggest superpower that I think I've ever had.
Yeah. That was what I was hoping you was going to say, because that's certainly what has come out from this. And anybody who watches and listens to this, I hope they really do soak in, the things that we've spoken about here and what you've actually gone through. Obviously with the injury and even, putting that to one side and having to wait all those years, to get to, was it 41, 42, to achieve your dreams. How many people go at something for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks and give up? It's been nearly 30 years,
Yep.
30 years to wait to get what you want. That's power, that is, Will, and I've got huge admiration and respect for you there, my friend. I find that so inspirational. I love stories like this. I love the underdog story, that having that mentality of, I'm just going to keep going, no matter what life throws at me, I'm just going to find a way. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go again. I'm going to go again. I'm going to go again. And that certainly feels like, the undercurrent to your life story. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to find a way. If I have to go under it, around it, through it, I'm going to find a way. And so much respect and admiration for you. I think it's absolutely amazing, what you have achieved so far, and it's clear to me that you've still got plenty left in the tank as well, haven't you?
Definitely. I mean, the next big goal is a little bit further down the road, Paris in 2024. That's the number one target for me now. So, but we've got a lot of really exciting events, that lead up to that. So I've signed a 3-year professional contract with St. Piran Pro Cycling Team. So I'm basically racing for them for the next 3 years, as well as racing for Great Britain. So, it's possible I'll be back at the Tour of Britain. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. So that'll be down for Steve Lampy or RDS to decide. But we've got a very strong squad of, 15 riders. So, yeah, I'll be under no illusions that everyone on the squad will want to ride Tour of Britain. So to nail it down to 6 will be an incredibly hard choice for him, I'm sure of that. So, but yeah, I mean, like, as well for British cycling, in the Paralympic dream, I've got World Championship events coming up. We've got the Road World Champs in Canada in August. In 5 weeks' time, it's 5 weeks' time, I've got the first round of the World Cup Series in Belgium. The following week, I'm in Germany for the second round. And next year as well will be the first time that the World Championships will be an inaugural event. That's happening in Glasgow. So we'll have track cycling, BMX, mountain bike, paracycling, track and road, all of it, all in one event, basically. That's the first time in the history of the sport that will have ever happened. Whoa. So, and the fact that's at home in Glasgow as well is going to be so exciting. It's just going to be incredible. So the world's cycling stars from, every discipline will be at their best in Glasgow next year. And that's going to be really something to look forward to as well.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. What advice would you give to your former younger self, which would help that younger you be an even greater success? You've had all of these events, all of these moments in time over your 40-something years of life. If you could go back to any earlier point in life, whenever it may be, a teenager, either before that or after that, you've gathered up all of these experiences and memories, and you've got some knowledge and wisdom. If you could go back in time and pass something on to yourself that would help him, what would this be?
Well, I mean, the way that we train nowadays in this day and age is so different to when I first started, racing a bike. When I first started racing, it was I was lucky that I had a good coach who put in specific efforts to do, specific intervals, but I did those based on my heart rate. Whereas nowadays, all the efforts that I do are based on power, physical power that you put out, because your heart rate's a variable. That can be up or down on a day, depending on what condition you're in, how tired you are or not. Or, there's so many different variables that can affect your heart rate. Whereas power is, it's basically you either produce a number or you don't. I think that would be the one thing that I would take back is I had power quite early on in 2006 on one of my bikes, and I think I just didn't utilize it in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. I think the point where I started using power to train effectively was probably 9-10 years later, sort of 2015 or 16.
Right. Whoa.
So there was a long period of there where I had a power meter on my bike that I didn't really do a lot with. It was, I'd look at numbers and I think, okay, that's not a bad number, but I wouldn't know what to do with it. And even my coach back then, he'd say, yeah, they're good numbers. So, but nobody really knew what to do with them. Nobody really knew what, a functional threshold power was and everything else. So using training to power was so early in its infancy back then. I had no idea about it. So I think that would be the one thing I'd take away is some of the modern training techniques that I utilize now to help me become as fit as I am now, ingrain those into myself when I was younger. And I've got absolutely no doubt I would have progressed a lot faster through the sport. Definitely, for sure.
Fantastic. What a great, insight that you've given there, that one, addition to your training methodology, clearly has had, a big impact on how that you train now. I used to do a decent amount, only amateur level, but I used to do sportifs and things like that. But I ummed and ahed around with it, about getting a power tap and the things put in my pedals. I never did it in the end. I just went off like heart rates and things. But I was aware of it. I was aware that I wasn't taking it that seriously, but I knew that if it was something that I wanted to take seriously, I was aware of, needing to measure wattage, measure power, and as you said, because it's so much more reliable. Your heart rate can change for all sorts of different reasons, and having the lesser equipment that I would have, sometimes even, your Garmin straps and watches and your monitors on your bike, they're not always that accurate either, are they? So it's not always that reliable, but as you say, power is power.
That's it. That's it. And I mean, these days, obviously, all my training is uploaded to an app called Training Peaks. So, you can see all the different trends. You can see what your chronic training load is, what your form is. So there's an app nowadays that measures effectively how fresh you're going to be for an event. So it takes a lot of the guesswork out of, okay, maybe if we do this, maybe if we do that, you can suddenly start to plot, 5-6 weeks in advance, and you can actually have a real confidence in what you're doing is going to get you to that place where you need to be when you get to a certain event. So that's made a huge difference as well.
I'm intrigued actually if you could shed some light on this for me, because one of the things that I also thought that the measuring power helped you to do was that, for example, say you're going up a hill and you're pumping out this amount of power, this amount of watts. Does it enable you to go, right, I know that keeping at this level of wattage, that I can keep going comfortably at this pace, at this kind of cadence and this power outage. But if I go beyond that, I know that it's going to, I'm probably going to burn out. I'm not quite explaining myself properly, but
there you are, yeah.
Is that what it enables you to do? I can bang out 500 watts, for 5 minutes. But if it was longer than that, if you're going to take 6 minutes, then if I was to keep going at 500 watts, I'm not going to get to the top of this hill or whatever without, seriously kind of burning out. Is that what it enables you to do?
Definitely. It's you can really measure your anaerobic efforts so much better. You can, that if you're in a race situation, there's very little you can do about it. You're not in control of necessarily the power that you have to put out to stay in the front group, because that will be dictated by the riders around you, basically.
Yeah.
But certainly, for example, for a time trial, or if you are in a race where the climb is, say, a longer climb, then yeah, you can measure your power. There was certainly climbs in the Tour of Britain last year where I'd go into the bottom of the climb doing 400 watts, and I think, right, okay, I know I can hang on to 400 watts for 8-9 minutes quite easily. So I think, right, okay, this climb theoretically is going to be 6 minutes. So if this gets me up comfortably in the bunch, then I know that I'm not going to be completely spent at the top or going out the back end of the peloton at the top. So there were certainly moments where I'd think about it like that. But certainly for time trials as well, I'll have a number in my head that I want to hit for the race for that night, or for that day, and I'll go out with that number basically and try and hang on to it. So the best way to pace a time trial is to be in that kind of questioning yourself. Am I pushing hard enough? Can I hang on to this figure? That's the point where you want to be, really. You don't want to be thinking, I can definitely hang on to this figure, and then you get to the finish and you think, well, could I have gone harder? You want to be just setting yourself that target just that little bit higher, and then hopefully you do hang on to the figure. But if you die off a little bit at the end, it's not the end of the world.
I see. Great advice there. Great advice. When you look back over your career so far, and again, it's still going, it's still got plenty of miles, literal miles, as well as physical literal ones. When you look back over your career now, how do you feel about it?
Incredibly proud, actually. Yeah, I mean, I've done some amazing races. I've had some amazing results. And I've done all of them, clean, effectively. I've never had to dope or anything like that to do anything. And I lived through that era of where a lot of mountain bikers were doping in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. So I'd seen heroes of cycling like Lance Armstrong fall foul of the doping rules and all the rest of it, and I've never had any of that in my life. So to have achieved what I've achieved, I'm incredibly proud of that. To have represented Great Britain as a mountain biker and now as a paracyclist, and I'm incredibly proud of everything that I've done, to be honest. Yeah.
That's fantastic, and I'm glad that you are. You certainly should. You certainly should be, mate. What 3 pieces of advice would you give to any young up and coming athlete today?
Look after yourself. Listen to your body. Your body will tell you when you're getting ill or when you're tired and stuff. You can sense it normally, almost a day out from getting a really bad cold. You can tell that, you're getting a bad cold. So at that point, that's a good stage to knock the training back off completely and, just let your body try and recover, basically. So that's definitely a key piece of advice. Looking after yourself, look after your diet as well. I mean, that's kind of coming under looking after yourself as well. But yeah, I mean, what you put into your body fuels it, whether that's, vegetables or, fruits and everything else. That makes a massive difference as well. So eating well, getting sleep as well. That's, again, looking after yourself, I suppose. But yeah, getting a good amount of sleep. So I have a sleep alarm on my phone that goes off at 9 o'clock every night to, remind myself that I need to be starting to wind down and get myself ready for bed and for tomorrow and everything. So those are definitely 3 of the big things, I think. Yeah.
Great advice. So on that note, bear in mind we're pushing on with time now. I've got the very last question for you, Will. What's your definition or meaning of excellence, achieving sporting excellence?
It's a tricky one, really. I mean, so many different things that I could think of. Oh, I don't know. Do I bring it back to, a personal achievement? So, it could be having won, multiple national titles or world championship medals, World Cup medals, or having the recognition of so many.
What is excellence to you? What does it mean to you when you think about achieving excellence? What is it?
I think it is living your dream.
Awesome.
I think it is basically when you do something that is something that you've aspired to do for such a long time. I think that has to be the ultimate sort of excellence, basically, from a sporting perspective.
Beautiful. What a great answer. Living your dream. And I remember there's a motivational speaker called Les Brown, and I won't get the exact wordage that he uses, but it's along the lines of, the graveyard is the place where, it's not just the dead bodies are, it's dreams, people's dreams that died there, that never got put into fruition. It's the place where people go, or where dreams go, where they're stored there, they're kept there. These people that have these ideas, these ambitions, they spent their life saying, I want to do this, I wish I could do that. And they for whatever reason, sometimes it's down to belief, it's pretty much always down to belief, self-belief, but they don't do it. They don't commit to something long enough to go and achieve the dream. So often people don't even set dreams, don't even have dreams out of the fear of not being able to achieve them, because when they really start thinking about what they could achieve, you could achieve some amazing things, but rather than kind of suffer the heartbreak of failing to do that, they hold back and stick to a life which is much less. So I think that's a beautiful way to finish off this interview, Will. And I just want to finish there just by saying, how first of all, thank you for giving up your time. But second of all, I've just absolutely loved this conversation. I've loved just learning about your mentality and just that sheer willpower and belief in yourself to just essentially be unstoppable, just unstoppable in terms of life's events, in terms of unstoppable towards achieving your dreams, your targets. And you are certainly an advocate for just believing in yourself and going after something that you're passionate about. So thank you again for coming on, and I hope people are as inspired listening to you as what I am, because it's your story certainly resonated very deeply with me, Will. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Take it easy. I'll certainly be keeping my eye out for you in the Glasgow Worlds, and obviously hopefully in Paris in a few years time.
Fingers crossed.
Take it easy, Will. See you later.
Thank you. Cheers, Rob.
The Inner Game Podcast, brought to you by the Science of Excellence. Unleash your power. Book your free consultation now.